Hey everybody, welcome back to Wrote Reviews. I'm here with Vance Sebastian and I am Baz Collins. And today we're doing a double feature. Like the old days back. Man, they haven't done double features in theaters in ages. Boy,
No,
that's
now when they do it, it's an event.
yeah, it's a major event when they do it. That's really funny. Anyways, we're doing a double feature of two queer documentaries that are of note. We're doing a review of The Celluloid Closet, which is based on the filmographer and historian Vito Russo, and we're also doing the Silver Screen Color Me Lavender, which is hosted by Dan Butler. And before we get into the reviews of it, one of the things that people need to understand about these two documentaries and why they're important is that it is the beginnings of really the heavy discussion of queer theory, which is coded queerdom within media, and seeing how queers can find those breadcrumbs to feel represented, because we have found out through a lot of Vito Russo's work and some other historians, Richard Dyer is another one from England, how they have seen the behind the stories, got some of the actors and the creators of those projects from the golden age of Hollywood up through the modern era in the 90s when this was produced. They actually found that queer people were involved in production. We all know that the gays run the industry, but because of the production codes, they had to hide a lot of it. So the idea of these two documentaries is to literally tell the tale of queer theory in media and how queers had to look for it, and how straight people were they were written in such a way that straight people only reaffirmed what they lived as their lives. So it leads to why there's so many people in today's age that say, why is there all this gay coming at me? Why? It was always there.
Me, sir?
I forgive you.
Oh!
Go right ahead, boys. Don't mind me.
Helen Broderick, mother of Broderick Crawford, indiscreetly acknowledges what everyone seems to take for granted. These character actors, even if they weren't gay, played gay.
It was just coded, and it became a thing that queers had to look for. So, sorry to break it to you, straights, but we've always been there. Our shit has been in the movies. You just weren't aware of it because of your lifestyle. You didn't have any concept that there were things in these movies for queer people to find. So that's queer theory in a very, very, very tiny peanut nutshell. It's not the whole of it, but these two films are really emblematic of when that really started to explode and queer theory started to be a thing.
Now, it's true, these guys will do and say anything for a laugh. And we know that nothing convulses an audience like fag gags. And well, what could be funnier than a straight guy pretending he's not quite as straight as he pretends? Except maybe a guy wearing a dress. But seriously, folks, why is a guy wearing a dress a surefire laugh getter, whereas a woman wearing men's clothing never provokes that response? And why were audiences of the time who found homosexuality so embarrassing so amused by the suggestion of it in comedy? Is it really that funny? And sometimes the desire for audience laughter never explains away the nonstop assault of innuendo.
Now, several universities teach queer theory. It is something that you can go take classes on and learn about. And I highly recommend people do it. It really is very fascinating work to see this stuff. So let's start off with Vance. Let's do the, before we get to Celluloid Closet, let's do the discussion about the Silver Screen Color Me Lavender, which was hosted by Dan Butler, who's an openly gay actor who was on Frasier. He played Mad Dog, wasn't it his name? Or I forget the name of the character. But anyways, he was the sports guy in Frasier. So he is the host of the Silver Screen Color Me Lavender. What did you think about that?
Content-wise, I loved it. It really, so for me, it opened up the history of pre-code cinema and the fact that male intimacy and even male romance was open. It was there.
It was there.
It just existed and people didn't mind. Nobody cared. And then the code came along and male attitudes had to be rewritten because we needed manly men. And it disappeared.
Especially during World War II. That was where a lot of it shifted also, was that because of wartime, it was something that Hollywood really pressed in the production code, that men had to be manly men, you know, kind of thing.
Yep. And a certain religious culture enforcing their values upon the world.
Thank you, Catholics.
So it disappeared. And, you know, as Baz said, people complaining that they're seeing it a lot now. It had been there, and it had been there in a very healthy way. Like I said, male intimacy shouldn't be seen as unhealthy.
Right.
You know,
for some reason, women get more of a pass than men do. You know, but
this film a little bit, but Celluloid Closet a lot touches on that, actually. The difference between why women hugging or in romance get more of a pass than men do. But for me, the most eye-opening aspect of both of them, but specifically Silver Screen, was the pre-code history. It actually gave me a couple of movies that I want to go back and find, if possible.
Right. No, yeah, it really does. Both these projects really make it. It's encapsulator for me. Both these projects is the moment in Celluloid Closet when Susie Bright does the whole comparison of Rebecca and how when she saw Rebecca, it's this old time film she had just turned on because there was nothing else on TV, and she just wanted, you have to remember this is before all the cable stuff was around, but she turned on an old movie and just thought she'd settle in for an old movie, and she ends up watching Rebecca.
The word homosexuality or lesbianism is never uttered, but there's this one scene that really stands out for a gay audience, and that is Rebecca is dead. She was the beautiful woman who is mysteriously not on the scene any longer, and her former housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers, is obsessed with her even after her death.
This is where I keep all her clothes. You would like to see them, wouldn't you? I keep her underwear on this side. They were made specially for her by the nuns and convent of St. Clair.
She opens the underwear drawer. It's so sensuous.
Look. You can see my hand.
There's this really strong inference that Judith Anderson's character, Mrs. Danvers, has this rather queer, intimate knowledge and relationship with Rebecca, the wife of Maxim, who died mysteriously, and she's not on screen. But as Susie says, when that moment hit, suddenly she put everything away with what was going on in the movie, and she was writing this whole other movie in her head about Mrs. Danvers and Rebecca. What was that about? Why did she know about this? How come she knows about the intimate, lingerie and stuff, and the way that it was so reverently shown to the new Mrs. De Winter, played by Joan Fontaine. And that is literally, I think, the point of both of these projects, of the coding that happened and went in. Queer people would see something and go, oh my gosh, that was for me, kind of thing. So,
right. So to finish my quick summation of the Silver Screen, Color Me Lavender. The other thing I will warn you, it was released in '97, and it is of the documentary style that makes NPR feel peppy. So if you're already tired,
it's really about the information. I mean,
it is absolutely about the information. 100%. It is not. It was never designed to entertain you, though they tried twice, and I'll explain that in a second. But they really were. It is there to inform you.
Yes.
Go into it knowing that, and if you need it, something with caffeine.
Yeah. It didn't quite hit me that way. I mean, the information for me and the journey of queerdom in cinema was really fascinating to me, and I ate that stuff up. So now when I watch anything, even in today's standards, I now have a much more informed lens to look for stuff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You know, so it's a real eye opener. I passed this on to a mutual author friend, Fred Feely, and I had him watch them. And he said he was blown away by these two documentaries because, you know, he kept hearing people say, oh, this is gay. Oh, no, these two people are gay. And in movies, and he just kept saying, you're just making this stuff up. And then when he saw the two projects side by side, he's like, no, it was there. These people are right. It was a part of culture. It is a part of our queer history. You know? So, yeah. But anyway, so what did you think of Celluloid Closet? Let's just do your whole spiel, and then you can kind of talk about that entertainment factor.
So obviously had a better budget, had some bigger names behind it. Susie Bright, as Baz mentioned, but also Lily Tomlin.
Lily Tomlin was a big force in the creation of the project. She actually spearheaded the funding for it and ended up taking it to HBO, Channel 4, and all the rest of them to get funding for the project.
Yep. Also very historic, but I think a little more angry in its presentation, especially when you get to like the 60s, 70s, where gays specifically have to either be comic relief or dead. They touch much more on that than the other film.
Which is why Boys in the Band was such a game changer, because they all survived.
Nobody died.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was still that angry thing.
So Celluloid Closet has a bit more emotion to it, I think. It's a little less of a dry documentary, and it's a little more entertaining, but equally as informative in its own way.
Especially when you get to the actors talking about being in those projects. I think one of the best conversations that happens is when Shirley MacLaine tells a story of her and Audrey Hepburn doing the Children's Hour, and how they really didn't. They knew kind of what they were doing and what the inferences were, but they, as actresses, never talked about that. And she found that herself really fascinating, that they knew what the implications were. They knew where the story went, but she just thought, isn't that odd that we knew what we were doing and yet we never had a discussion about it? Because at the time, nobody did. Nobody talked about it.
They couldn't.
You know? Yeah. You know, that's the part for me that's fascinating about all of this stuff. So from the entertainment factor you were talking, you wanted to talk a little bit about that. Go ahead.
I think I pretty much touched on it.
Oh, okay.
They brought in more voices to relay the information, which brought in more perspectives. There's more money behind it, so it's a better production quality, and it moves a little faster.
And the stories are really entertaining. You know, you hear from Tony Curtis when they made Some Like It Hot. You know, you hear Gore Vidal's wonderful dissertation about Spartacus. And with Charlton Heston, and just the stuff going on. And when you hear Gore explain it, and how the actors other than Heston and the director were in on it, playing up this male romance between Spartacus, you know, and his friend from his past. I can't remember the character's name, but you know, and then you see it. They show you the clip from the movie. You're like, oh my God, it's right there. You know? And I love that they played Secret Love from Calamity Jane over it, you know, because it really does personify the queer moment in that film, where you go, Jesus, it's right there. And why, you know, nobody's and nobody in the 50s thought to question it, because at the time you didn't, you know, but yet the actors and the creators knew what was happening, you know, so it's fascinating.
All but one of them.
Yes. Yeah, all but Charlton, who was just doing his posing, you know. You gotta love Gore Vidal. his little little barbs that he throws out there. But you know, I liked it because you also got the perspective of the writers. You got J. Preston Allen. You got Arthur Lawrence. who were involved in some of the biggest movies that were out there. And, it's really amazing to listen to the writers and their journey of what they had, which is, why for me, it was a big one to do for Rote, because you really get the sense of how, and I think J. Preston Allen says it best. She said, these people who were in the code office, they weren't the brightest crayons in the box. You learned how to subtext it. You learned how to do it with a look or with, so there were these ways that queer writers figured out how to put the stuff in there, and that it has been there all along. And that, I think, if the far right gets wind of queer theory like this, they're going to lose their shit. Forget critical race theory. They're going to be on us gays like they've never been before. I don't think it's just caught fire yet, but queer theory is just as pervasive and, is subtly threaded in everything that's been out there. And it's really kind of a mind blower to see the level of work put behind these two projects. It is unfortunate that Color Me Lavender didn't have the budget, because I think they had a really unique take on it, as you said, the pre-code history and stuff, and of which Celluloid Closet only kind of glosses over in the beginning before they get right into
they pretty much started at the code.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that Gore Vidal, likens Willie Hayes to Mickey Mouse. Who was head of the production code. But it was really, really, that part of it, listening to the creators. There were some of the actors that were in there, but there were a lot of the production, the writing staff, the production staff. Those people talked about it as well. And then you hear people like, Harry Hamlin, who did Making Love, which was a huge bomb that went off when that came out. I remember being in the theater, and they were right. When the two guys started going at it, you could literally feel in the theater everybody pull back. It was very, very palpable. I mean, I remember being in that theater and just drinking everything in that movie, because it was unabashedly about us. And Harry Hamlin said, he says, I look at movies and I see two guys going, he goes, I question it. And he goes, wait a minute. You've been there. You've done this. You know what that is, but it's still, that's that whole, production thing of where they really enforced straight, heterosexual romances and relationships. And I think straight people need to understand, this is why when queers are unabashed about it, when they put new projects out now, and you hear the straight people going, God, what's all this gay stuff? Gay, 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 gay. I think they're getting that taste of what we've had to live with for so long. And now they've got to find the straight part. Well, it's like, Harvey Fierstein says it quite clearly. He said, it's great that, you found a way to translate it for you, but honey, the shit's gay. It's just gay, when he talked about his Torch Song trilogy, there, people were saying, oh, I loved it. I love the character, the relationships and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I'm glad. I'm happy you found something in it. But it's really for us, So, those films were real pivot points in the evolution of being more unapologetic and just letting it be, and then we had to get through the whole AIDS period where the movies were made about people dying, which was, what was happening in literature. It was, reported in the news the whole time. So it wasn't until, and there's a third documentary, which I'll bring up, that we didn't review for this one, but at some point we will cover it, called Fabulous, which was all about new queer cinema that rose out of that in the 90s, where it actually is all the independents who did not have the big budgets, and why we have queer independent films made today that was the start of it in new queer cinema that arose in the 90s. So the big gay 90s, that was what happened there. So we'll get to Fabulous at some point. But for these two, what did you think? Let's do Color Me Lavender first, since we talked about it first. Okay. Give me your reviews for that, your ratings.
Color Me Lavender. I was really harsh on this one until we got to the content. But I was harsh knowing I was harsh because I want you to understand, as a modern viewer who's very used to modern cinema and modern productions, what you're about to walk into. So overall production, I gave a 3. Script and screenplay, I gave a 3 because it was really informative. It was just kind of slow and dry. Sound, lighting, score, 3. They did the best they could. Art direction, costuming, 2. And that, I was kind of, there were some moments where I was just like, was that really the best choice you could make for $12? Casting, I didn't rate, actually. If you need me to, I will, but there was only one cast member visible.
Right.
That would be Dan. And he did fine. So I guess casting would be a 3. Directing, again, 3. They relayed the information, but I think there was some directing.
It's slightly more academic.
It's very academic, like I said.
Very
but also
queer theory. Mm-hmm.
They once or twice the director tried to do something cool, and either they didn't follow through or right after it, there was an error. And I'll give an example. There's a scene where the black and white actors are on the screen, and then all of a sudden Dan walks in behind him, and you can tell they're early green screen technique, but green screening him in. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool because he's walking in and talking between the characters in this old movie. But then in the next take, Dan is standing there in front of the actual green screen and you see the green. I'm like, no, that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
So I had a couple issues with the direction. Queer themes presented, 5. Hands down, that was the best and most important element of this film. So personal rating overall, 3.5.
Okay, that's fair. For me, I'm rating it higher only because it is a tremendous eye-opener. It really does validate what queers have felt all along in cinema. It really kind of underscores, us saying, all these slash fic stuff that came out of it, from people writing about the 2 gay character or 2 male characters and thinking that, Butch Cassidy and Sundance, what was really going on there, kind of thing. And that part of it I really like. I also loved in Color Me Lavender, I also loved the whole exploration of the cowboy and the old, geezer.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was really, really fascinating to watch that. And, and you have to admit, I mean, even though they had a much smaller budget, the fact that they were able to garner these clips, that probably ate 90% of their budget. I'm pretty positive Dan did it for free or threw it in because he knew the project was really important. But it was something that I think they wanted to give more of an academic feel to. That was my takeaway, because I had seen Celluloid Closet before. I found this one after, and I think it was almost more for the new queer theory academia that was starting to flourish and starting to happen. And I think that was part of why it might have been a bit drier. But I think Dan did a really decent job with what he was given. He really kind of put the wryness and the irony in some of the situations. He did read it that way. So there is a little bit of queer shade that comes in on it. A production value, I agree with you. It's a 3. Sound, lighting, score, it's unobtrusive. It's barely there in many respects. So I gave it a 3. Art direction, I gave it a 3.5, and I think it's only because at that time they tried to do something interesting other than your standard, here's my documentary guy talking headshot, and then here's the clip. So for that, I give them, I'd like to give them a little nudge up. Cast, I love Dan Butler, so I'll give that a 4. The queer aspect of it, I think that was brilliant. You know, it is the best part of it. So I gave that a 5. Directing, yeah, I think it's a 3. My personal overall, I'm going to give it a 4, only because the information is so valuable. It really does reset your queer clock on what's out there, and it does make you want to go look at some of these old films so you can see it in action. You know, so that's our ratings for Color Me Lavender, the silver screen cover Me Lavender. What did you think of Celluloid Closet with your ratings?
Everything got bumped up a notch. Overall production 4. Again, it's still mid-90s. Script screenplay 4. I think it was a little more entertaining, a little more engaging, and there was certainly some more emotion behind it. Sound lighting score 4. Again, they brought in more, and because I watched them back to back, it was noticeably better. Art direction, costuming 4. It wasn't about that, so it was good for what it was. Casting 4.5. They brought out some names, and
they brought some heavy hitters. Yeah,
they brought some heavy hitters, and they told stories that you aren't going to hear anywhere else.
Right.
Directing 4.5 for exactly the same reason. The director knew who to bring when and who to let talk about which projects, which is also fairly important. Queer themes presented 5. It is absolutely top notch again. So overall, 4.75 if Baz will let me get away with that kind of craziness.
He wants to use his fractions.
I do.
I gotta figure out how to do. I was gonna do the number just like 3 stars and half.
Okay.
Then I thought, okay, then I'll do stars that are 3 stars, and I'll only fill in the star halfway. But now that you've done 0.75, I'm like,
well, you could do.
Maybe I could do like partially filled in and outlined,
or 4 stars and 3/4.
Yeah, I guess. I was just trying to keep it graphic rather than putting in actual numbers. All right. I'll figure out something for this one. For me, production, I gave it a 5. It definitely had the money. Much thanks to Channel 4 and HBO, who ponied up the big bucks and got the big players and secured the rights for all the clips that they did show. So, and I think it's interesting that both Color Me Lavender and Celluloid Closet used the Edison shot as the beginning of it all, and I think that, and if people don't know what that is, if you watch either of these documentaries, the very first opening sequences are exactly the same. So it's that part of it's really interesting. Art direction, I thought it was much better. I grew up in the 90s watching these things, so for me, it was kind of standard fare. It wasn't quite the Ken Burns era yet, so we didn't start to distance ourselves and grow as a documentary area until that. Art direction, I liked it. I loved the colors and the balance and the way that they shot the individual stars and writers and producers and those people. They shot them differently so that it added some variance to, it wasn't just standard talking head moment and they were all the same. They did vary it up. So that part of it I really liked. Cast 5, because there are some big names from the golden era that are in this whole thing. Direction I thought was a 5. I really liked the direction that was done on it. The queer theories 5. The writing, I thought the research was based on Vito Russo's book. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to throw a tidbit in here. If you buy the book that it's based on, it's a bit more angry about what happened and how it happened. He goes after the juggler on people who created the code, and he really drives that home. So the film is much more, let's concentrate on the positive and the historical aspect of it, but the book is a bit more angry and a bit more aggressive in his disdain for how it happened. So just a balance there. If you do go pick up the book that it's based on, it is going to be a much more intense read because he was an activist. He, as much as a historian that Vito Russo was, he was an activist. And sadly, he was involved with the project until his death, which was when they were producing it. So he never got to see it developed into a film, which is sad, but I think they did a really good job for that. So my overall is a 5. I just really, really love The Celluloid Closet. And I've watched it many times just because I love hearing those stories from all the people behind. I just, especially when you get Whoopi Goldberg talking about the sissy, it's just wonderful. It's just a really, really good tale. So that's it for The Celluloid Closet and Color Me Lavender, the silver screen, Color Me Lavender. We both recommend them, if anything, just for the sheer volume of history and the volume of content. It will change how you view media.
And as you are watching them, however you take notes, whether it's on your phone in a notepad or actually with a piece of paper and a pen, have that nearby so you can write down the names of the films you want to watch.
Because they give it to you.
You're seeing. They do. They're all credited.
They're all identified. So great way to open up and see some really quality old films and to see what they did with them. In fact, I've added a movie to our list of movies to review that is one of those old films, The Man with the Horn, which is the one with Kirk Douglas and Doris Day and Lauren Bacall. And that one looks to be really, really good. I can't wait till we get to that movie. I love that we can go back now to some of these old movies and see some of the queer aspects that were coded and talk about it from that perspective. So that's it for this week. We hope you do take a look at both of these documentaries. Silver Screen Color Me Lavender is a little harder to find. You can get it. It is available at Amazon. I did check. So there are places that still have it, but it is a little bit harder to find. If you don't, because some people don't like buying from Amazon because they don't want to give Bezos more money. So, but I did find it there, so you can get it there. But
I mean, let's shoot him into space and leave him there.
Huh? I'm sorry. What? Oh,
what did I say? Did I say that out loud?
Did that come out loud? Anyways,
filter was off. I'm so sorry.
Exactly. So they are worth seeing. I think you can watch Celluloid Closet on HBO, or it's on Amazon Prime, right? But you have to rent it. It's
Prime for $3 rental. I think it might be deep in the HBO Max back library somewhere.
Yeah, because it is an HBO product. So there's that.
But Amazon Prime for $3. As of this recording, $3 rental on Amazon Prime.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So there's a way to see that. There are clips of it available on YouTube, little snippets, but not the whole movie. I think you can rent it from YouTube as well. I think they have it for their movie rentals as well. So next week, I am proposing to Vance that we watch a film that I've been dying to watch, but I have not watched. See, I've viewed Celluloid Closet and some of these other movies, and Vance has not seen them. But this one I have for Vance and I to review, but I've not seen it either. So I'm eagerly waiting to watch it.
What is it? Say the title.
It's The Man with the Orange Shirt. So it is a dual kind of side-by-side modern tale and a tale from World War II about gays. So it's going to be rather interesting. It was well received in Britain. It's a British production, it's BBC production, but it looks really good. It has one of my favorite actors, Oliver Jackson Cohen, who I absolutely adore. And so it looks to be very, very, very promising. So we'll see. It's what's next on our little list. All right. So everybody, remember to like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Comment down below if you've seen it and you have thoughts you want to share. We will definitely mailbag this and talk about some of the review people have responded back to us about. So, looking forward to the conversation. And if you've got a movie you want us to review, definitely put it down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you're thinking we should see. All right. So until next week. This is Baz. Yeah, this is Vance. That's Baz. The role of Baz is being played by.
I'm the guy over here in this frame